If you've ever given 15 years of your life to a company, only to wake up one morning to a 3-minute phone call and watch everything you've built crumble, then you'll understand exactly how I felt that Monday morning. 8 a.m. The phone rang just as I poured my first cup of coffee. It was an internal number from Drexler Dynamics, the tech giant I'd been with since 2009. My name is Ethan Myers, Director of Product Development, one of the earliest builders of the software platform now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Ethan, I'm sorry, said Janet, the head of HR, her voice cool and rehearsed. The leadership has decided to terminate your contract, effective immediately. This decision was finalized over the weekend. I froze. What happened? I've never had a bad performance review. It's not performance-related. She cut me off. Just restructuring. The call ended as abruptly as it began. Like tossing away a used paper cup. I stood in the kitchen, stunned. The coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the tile floor. And now I was discarded over a phone call? But that was just the tip of the iceberg. 3 days later, I found something that made my blood boil. I spoke to a former colleague who casually mentioned that our new CEO, Greg Mathers, had shifted company focus to a brand new platform. That's when I learned. The design I had pitched and had rejected 6 months ago was now being reused word for word, without my name attached. They hadn't just restructured. They'd stolen my work, fired me to keep the spoils, and moved on without a trace of guilt. I felt betrayed. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, I started planning. Planning revenge. I wasn't the kind of guy to run straight to a lawyer. I wanted them to feel what I had felt, but tenfold. I spent the next 3 weeks barely sleeping. I combed through every email, every document, every code commit, every pitch deck I'd ever shared. And then I found it, the smoking gun, an auto-recorded Zoom meeting where I clearly presented the core idea of the platform they're now using. And Greg, the CEO, shut it down in front of the entire board. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd go away like a loser. They were wrong. I used to believe recognition came from doing the right thing. That if you worked hard and stayed loyal, people wouldn't betray you. But I've learned that justice doesn't live in boardrooms. It lives where you fight for it. I had the evidence, the Zoom recording, the design files, time-stamped emails. Everything pointed to me as the original creator of the platform they were now using to raise $50 million in venture capital. I didn't want a scandal. At first, I simply emailed the leadership team privately, attaching proof and stating a clear request. Either acknowledge my contribution and compensate me fairly, or I'd go public. No response for 3 days. On the 4th, I got a call, this time from Greg Mathers himself. His voice was smooth, almost polished. Ethan, I understand your frustration, but the truth is the company has moved forward. Nobody wants to dig up the past. We're willing to offer a modest financial gesture if you agree to walk away. I gripped my phone. Greg, I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for fairness. He chuckled. Fairness? Ethan, you should know what game you're playing. This is business, not a morality parade. I hung up, heart pounding. His words weren't just cold, they were threatening. And I knew, if I kept going, I had to be ready to lose more than I imagined. I filed a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, and the Department of Labor, and hired a sharp intellectual property attorney, Natalie Chun. She looked me in the eyes and said, if you're ready to fight, we'll make them afraid. The story started to leak. An anonymous Reddit post, then Twitter, then whispers in startup Slack groups around San Francisco. Former colleagues messaged me, offering support. Some even sent documents that backed my claims. Drexler Dynamics seemed to panic. A week later, I received an invitation to a friendly discussion at their Palo Alto HQ. I went with Natalie and a USB drive filled with everything. The meeting took place on the 12th floor, in a glass-walled conference room. Greg sat across from me, hands folded, his face not cold, but cautious. We're open to discussion, he began. 2 hours passed. They offered a $250,000 hush payment, no recognition, no apology, no credit in company records. Natalie looked at me. Is it enough? Part of me wanted to take it and forget. I was tired, exhausted, But another part of me screamed, don't let them erase your name from what you built. I stood up. I'm not selling the truth for that price. Greg stared at me, visibly irritated. Then good luck. You won't find work in this industry again. When this door closes, no other door opens. I walked out feeling like I'd lost. No job. Reputation smeared quietly. Every tech door seemed to slam shut behind me. But I still had one thing, the truth. And I knew one day the truth would be my greatest weapon. I once thought I was alone. But then I realized, when you dare to speak up, others who've been hurt will find you. They were just waiting for someone to go first. After the pivotal meeting at Drexler HQ, I returned to my small Oakland apartment. I barely slept for 2 days, my mind spinning with doubt. Was this worth it? Am I doing the right thing or just flailing in a fight I can't win? That's when a message popped up from Lena Morales, former lead engineer at Drexler. We'd worked side by side for 5 years until she left over strategic differences with leadership. Ethan, I heard what happened. I've got something you need to see. Attached were internal documents, development logs, meeting notes, and the crown jewel, an email from Greg himself to the board titled, Ethan's Idea, Reframe for Q2 Strategic Proposal. I stared at the screen, stunned. This was undeniable. With Lena's blessing, Natalie and I began preparing the lawsuit, not just for credit, but for intellectual property fraud, retaliatory termination, and creative theft. And then something unexpected happened. 2 weeks later, Wired magazine contacted me. They'd seen the Reddit buzz and wanted an interview. I hesitated. But in the end, I said yes with one condition: no anonymity. I wanted to put my name on the truth. The story, titled Fired for Creating Ethan Myers and Silicon Valley's Dirty Secret, dropped on a Monday. In 24 hours, it had over 100,000 shares. Forums exploded. Tech workers started sharing similar stories of stolen ideas and silenced voices. That day alone, I got over 300 emails. One stood out: Samira Khan, partner at Arrowstone Ventures, a VC firm investing in next-gen enterprise AI. Ethan, I believe you still have more to build. If you have a new idea, don't let it die in silence. We're ready to listen. I read the email again and again. I wasn't emotional because of the funding, but because, for the first time in weeks, someone saw me as more than a failure. But I didn't reply right away. I had one more thing to do. 3 days later, I showed up at the preliminary hearing between me and Drexler Dynamics. Greg wouldn't look at me, but when my lawyer presented the email titled Ethan's Idea, I saw him swallow hard. The case had gone too far to be silenced with a check. I didn't want settlement. I wanted justice, not just for me, but for everyone like me. The court hadn't ruled yet, but the public already had. And that was enough to begin again. 1 week later, I sat at my laptop, typing out the first lines of a brand new idea. No Greg, no Drexler, no fear, just me, and the belief that truth doesn't need to shout, but once it's heard, it can shake an empire. Some days, I sat alone in a small cafe on 14th Street, staring at half-finished sketches and asking myself, starting over, is it worth it after losing everything? But then I'd look again, at the emails, the messages from strangers and old colleagues, saying my story gave them the courage to stand up, to speak out, to stop bowing before injustice. And I knew it was worth it, every bit. 3 months after the hearing, I officially won the case. Drexler was ordered to acknowledge my intellectual property and pay $850,000 in damages. Greg didn't show up for the verdict. Word had it he quietly resigned from the board. I didn't care. I didn't need to see him fall. I just needed to see myself rise. The money wasn't the most valuable thing. What I gained was freedom, restored credibility, and a name now recognized not for scandal, but for courage. I launched Phoenix Core, an AI startup with a bold, simple mission: give creative power back to the creators. No fake equity, no exploitation, no templates. I reached out to engineers, designers, and coders who had been cast aside. No Ivy League resumes required. We started in a rented garage in Fremont. Days bled into nights, arguments into breakthroughs, and lines of code became our anthem. Then came our first product, Atlas, an AI system that not only optimized business performance but also detected early signs of internal bias and suppression. Ironically, if Drexler hadn't stolen my old idea, this product might never have existed. One fall afternoon, I stood in front of our brand new glass building, Phoenix Score's official HQ. Inside, 48 team members buzzed around, prepping for our demo day with major investors. Natalie walked over, coffee in hand, smiling. Someone once said all they needed was a corner to work in. Now look at you. A whole empire. I laughed, looking around. The golden hour light bathed the city. My heart felt full. Not from money, not fame, but from knowing this dream. I rewrote it with hands that once hit rock bottom. That night, I sat alone in the office, staring at the San Francisco sky. I opened my laptop. A new email came in. From Lena.Morales@polyverse.tech. Subject, Ethan. I've got one more thing you need to see. I smiled. This story isn't over, and I'm ready for the next chapter. Not just for me, but for every voice that was ever silenced. Sometimes what feels like the end is only the beginning of something far greater.